Lindholm, right wing corner. Pasternak is there. He scores! David Pasternak wins it for Boston. After Game 6, Jim Montgomery said Pasta has to step up. The place is alive because Pasta stepped up. Long on the far side, Pasternak reads this dump in from Lindholm. He beats the Leafs to it off the far boards and is able to make the deke and swing it around the leg of Ilya Samsonov. And the Bruins go on to Florida with a Game 7 overtime win.
Welcome into Sunday Skate. There it is, the final call of David Pasternak's overtime winner in Game 7 against the Maple Leafs Saturday night at the Garden.
You had no faith. You wouldn't even talk to me during the game. I'm still mad about that.
Well, listen, this is how you got to approach the playoffs. Like, expect the worst and then be blown away when the best happens.
Well, you were really down after the Game 5 loss.
Well, Game 5 and Game 6. I mean, look, how could you not be? Like, if you're a Bruins fan and you saw what they did last year, it looks like the same thing's happening. But as we're going to get in throughout this show, like, this Bruins team to respond in Game 7 and to step up as a team, the individuals who stepped up, this is why we love sports. Like, that's just incredible cinema last night. Like,
it couldn't have had the more, like, perfect punch ending with Pasternak scoring because of the way that people have been talking about him. And quite frankly, a lot of the times I disagree when people say Pasternak's gone quiet in the playoffs, but this time you could really tell he wasn't quite himself, and that must just be such a huge weight lifted off his shoulders to score the most important goal in the series.
Yeah, games 5 and 6 especially, he was quiet. He gets called out by his coach after Game 6. Jim Montgomery says he needs to step up. He's coming under criticism. It's like every storyline just totally builds to that moment where you have, on one side, the Bruins trying to avoid history, trying to avoid being the first team to blow 3-1 lead back-to-back years. On the other side, you have the Leafs constantly lose Game 7s. They've now lost 6 in a row as a franchise. Like, they can't get it done. You have the Pasternak storyline. Hampus Lindholm was criticized in this series. He has an unbelievable Game 7. Jeremy Swayman runs with the jaw, like, just so much that is just, like, just as a fan of hockey, it's just unbelievable. We're often running here on Sunday Skate. I'm Scott McLaughlin. That's Bridget Peru. Nico's behind the glass. Razor, not in studio because he is going to be on the team flight down to Florida. Very quick turnaround. Game 1 of the second round is Monday night. Bruins fly to Florida today. Razor will be checking in at 10 a.m., though, so we will still be hearing from him.
I wonder if Fourier will call.
He said he was. Fourier said on Twitter.
He tweeted at us last night that he was going to call. So I'm sure he has some expert opinions about goaltending and what they should do. Should they go back to Allmark for Game 1 in Florida? I'm sure he has a lot to say.
Yes, and we will be doing some look ahead to Florida because, again, that's tomorrow night. Like no time to really dwell, but absolutely we're starting with this because, Bridget, you mentioned, I was a little negative. I feel like, how could you not be? But for this team to step up, to respond in Game 7, for the team leaders to do it, for Pasternak, Lindholm, Swayman, terrific in goal again. What does it tell you about this team? Now they've got this monkey off their back. They didn't blow it. They're out of the first round. They've gone further than last year. Yes, it shouldn't have taken until 7 games, but that was impressive last night.
Yeah, and Montgomery gave us a really candid post-game, too, where he talked about the fact that he had nerves when he woke up in the morning before Game 7, and they were calmed. He went golfing with his son. He took a nap. He came to the rink, and Pasternak asked him, how's your nap? And everybody was just super calm. And basically, they were able to pull it together. They lose games 5 and 6, and you think the same thing might happen as last year, especially because Game 7 goes to overtime, the same way Game 7 ended for Boston against Florida, not with the same result, with a loss last year. But based on every player we talked to after the game and coach, the mentality going into this game for the Bruins was different than last year. They weren't really feeling that outside noise, and some of that had to do with I guess you could call this a coaching decision that Montgomery made outside of the game to put them up in a hotel, because he acknowledged the fact that they haven't been good at home since he started coaching there. They've lost more games at home in the playoffs than they've won. So they treated it like a road trip. They got a hotel, and they kept the outside noise away. And I think, I mean, you can't point to it as like a definitive thing, but it feels like it must have at least calmed some of the nerves mentally.
Yeah, part of me wants to say that kind of stuff's overrated, changing your routine. As you said, they stayed at a local hotel Friday night. They didn't sleep in their own beds. They had their team meetings there, video sessions.
I think they took their naps there. I'm not sure. I think they spent a lot of the morning there, I think.
Then they had morning skate at the Garden instead of at Warrior. Usually their morning skates are always at Warrior unless there's some special reason for it to be at the Garden. They changed that up. They hold at the Garden. So, like you said, they were clearly searching for ways to be they've been a better road team the last 2 years in the playoffs. Before last night, they were 2-5 at home the last 2 years in the postseason. So they changed that up, and, part of me is like, do you really have to do, you shouldn't really have to do that, but it seems like it worked. Seems like the guys bought in. Marchand, after the game, told us that Kevin Shattenkirk gave, as he described it, an incredible speech to the team at the hotel. So again, you see the importance of not just leadership from your captains, but from other veterans who have been through it. Shattenkirk's won a Stanley Cup. Pat Maroon at morning skate, he was available to media. One of my favorite quotes from morning skate, someone asked him, how do you handle the pressure? And he said, you're talking to the wrong guy. I just go out and play. Basically, I don't feel pressure. Shattenkirk was that same thing. He said, you just have to take it head on. Just embrace it. You can't avoid pressure, so just tackle it head on. And I feel like that kind of message from the veterans finally sunk in. Yes, would have been great if it sunk in for Game 5 or Game 6. But the goal is to win the series, and they do that. They step up in Game 7.
And when you talk about things that are different from personnel-wise from this team last year to this year, those are two guys that were not here last playoffs. I mean, the Bruins had different veterans last year. They had Foligno, they had Bergeron, they had Krejci. And this year they replaced them once they moved on from Foligno, traded him to Chicago, and Krejci and Bergeron retired. They bring in some other veterans. James Van Riemsdyk, another guy who I thought looked like he was pushing the pace at times for someone that had struggled later on in the season. He looked to be mentally locked in for Game 7. And then Shattenkirk getting into the lineup instead of Grzelcyk, which I think was the right move. And you also understand that he has that experience that he can use, and just having him on the bench to talk to guys rather than, he can say a lot more than Grzelcyk can say in those situations. And then obviously Pat Maroon coming in at the trade deadline. Those are all people that the Bruins did not have last playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way some young guys stepped up. This was the first series that Swayman got to run with as start. I know he didn't start Game 2, obviously, but he starts 6 of the 7 and was just outstanding the entire series. Not only did he not have a bad game, I don't think he let in a single bad goal.
No.
I'm not sure you could pick any goal and be like, he should have stopped that. Hold them to one goal in Game 7. He finally gets his first big signature win, because that was the third Game 7 he's played. And even though he wasn't the guy those other years, he came in against Carolina in 2022 after the first 2 games when Ullmark lost the first 2. Last year, as we know, he comes in cold for Game 7 after Ullmark starts the first 6. This was his series, and he runs with it. He's awesome. He's been the best goalie in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far through the first round. And gets that Game 7 win, like gets that big signature win, series win that he can now build off moving forward. I thought Mason Lohrei was excellent last night. Justin Brazeau, that third line of him, Trent Frederick, and James Van Riemsdyk was great. They're the ones who set up Hampus Lindholm's game-tying goal. Like, it really was, kind of an up and down the roster team effort.
Yeah, and Johnny Beecher throughout this series, he was scratched for one game, but he scores that very opening goal of the series in Game 1. And if you notice, Montgomery uses him in very important face-off situations. He trusts him there. He hasn't been as strong, I think, in the series as some of the other. I mean, obviously, it's an understatement to say Jeremy Swayman was the best player in the series because it's a no-brainer. That's who played so much better than really expected. We know he's good, but to steal a series, I mean, he took the goalie rotation and he just threw it out the window. He made you not be able to go back to Ullmark. And I wonder what would have happened if Swayman played Game 2. That was the only game that Ullmark got into. And it was the last game. And now we're not really sure what we're going to see in the second round in terms of goaltending. Do they give both guys a game in the first two games down in Florida? Or do you just keep going with Swayman? Because he, like you said, did not give up a bad goal in this whole series.
No, he didn't. And, definitely want to get, when we have Razor on, like, we definitely get his thoughts on both the play of Swayman and what to do the next round. Because I think.
And I want to hear we know what he has to say about he never liked the goalie rotation in the playoffs, right? He was fine with it in the regular season, no issue. But I think that his point is very, you could see it play out because you give Swayman the net mentally, he's locked in and he never looks back, right? Like you could argue that the reason why he played so confidently in Game 7 and in his wins on the road as well is because he knew he had the vote of confidence and he knew it was his net and sometimes you can't really, those are kind of things you can't quantify how much it mentally helps a goalie to know where you stand.
Well, and Jim Montgomery highlighted him as the guy to follow in this series, like as the one who was setting the example of how Montgomery wanted to see everyone on the team approach these closeout games. And he said it after Game 7. He said, he was our best player in the series. It's not close, right? I think that his confidence and his swagger, I think it permeated through the group. Took a while, but it got there. And you see that, right? And it's that fine line that like sometimes can be maybe mixed up with arrogance. Like when Swayman's asked, what was it like to finally get a Game 1 start? And he says it's about time, right? Like you could hear that and be like, what do you mean it's about time? Like when did you really think you earned this before? But that's the swagger. It's like he's wanted this. He's been waiting for this moment, and now he's taking advantage of it. And they needed more guys they needed more guys who wanted that moment and were ready to step up and take advantage and run with the opportunity. And that Montgomery said it after Game 7. He thought he could see like a whole team worth of guys who wanted to be difference makers. And, kind of went on. Montgomery didn't say this, but kind of goes on, said, like, maybe that wasn't there in Games 5 and 6. There probably weren't enough guys who really embraced wanting to be difference makers in those games. Took too long, but finally got there Game 7.
And I want to be clear, like, in every conversation we've had with Jeremy Swayman, cockiness is not, like, cocky is not a word I would use to describe him at all. Confident for sure.
I think there's a little cockiness, but, like, not in a bad way at all.
I think, yeah, see, I just perceive cockiness to be, like, a negative word, so I would use the word confidence instead. Maybe it's semantics, but...
Yeah, it's a little bit semantic. Like, I'm not using it as a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, he, and by the way, like, this series did, bizarrely, we weren't expecting it. Like, it turned into a goalie duel, really the last 3 games, because Joseph Woll was excellent for Toronto in Games 5 and 6. The Bruins, yes, did not do enough to make his job difficult, especially in the first periods of those games.
Turns out they made Game 7 pretty difficult for him. On the last play of the game, he tries to stretch out to stop that Morgan Geekie goal that went in with 0.1 seconds left. That seemed like it was just a nothing, throw it away. Like, not important moment, and then you watch the replay and you see him dive across and he like hyperextends his hip or something, or one of his legs just bends the wrong way.
His right leg kind of like jams under him. It looks like. And
they didn't know. We heard Sheldon Keefe's press conference after the game as well, and he said that they didn't know Woll wasn't going to be able to go. They all through morning skate they thought it was going to be him, and then later on in the afternoon, the decision was made by medical staff that he wasn't going to be the one to go. So Samsonov has to come back in, and he hadn't been their better goalie in the series. So in a weird way, that goal by Morgan Geekie at the end of Game 6 did affect Game 7 much more than it really should have if Woll didn't get injured. It doesn't affect Game 7 at all, but it could have been we don't know what would have happened if Woll starts that game.
Right, yeah. Talk about like just the importance of playing to the buzzer. Like you said, like in the moment, that Geekie goal, you'd think absolutely nothing of it. It's like, oh, wow, congratulations. Great. Wall didn't get a shutout because he scored with 0.1 seconds left. Well, it turns out he hurts himself. Well, or, we think that's the play it happened on. I guess that's not 100% confirmed, but it certainly looked like that.
Well, he said late in Game 6. Yeah. It was like, yes, very, very late in Game 6.
But yeah, so they, Keefe said that they told Samsonov on Friday, like, hey, just prepare as if you're going to start just in case. And then, it's weird. Like, I was at Leafs Morning Skate, and nothing really stood out. You didn't notice Wall, like, struggling, or he didn't leave the ice early or anything. Now, we didn't know, so, like, we weren't really, like, I wasn't really looking for it. I'm watching Austin Matthews because he was the bigger question. All eyes
were on Austin Matthews. Right. Is he going to play? Is he sick? Is he injured?
But
and he plays.
So ends up being Samsonov, who obviously struggled the first 4 games, but he plays well in Game 7. Like unlike Games 5 and 6, the Bruins did get shots early. Like they did test him. It's not like it was overwhelming. It wasn't like an avalanche of great scoring chances, but Samsonov had to make some saves, and certainly did his part in that game. If you want to say like maybe he should stop Lindholm's goal. It was a good shot. There wasn't a whole lot of space there, and Lindholm kind of banks it off his shoulder inside the post. So, yes, you needed Swayman to be excellent because the Leafs, by the end of the series, were also getting really good goaltending. All right, we are off and running on Sunday Skate. You can call in 617-779-7937. Text us 37937. I already see calls, texts that we're going to react to. As we said, Razor calling in at 10. We'll get his take. Bridget has you trending, and we will be right back.
Breaking down a Game 7 win over the Leafs. This is Sunday Skate on WEEI.
You see you face earlier in the year prepare you for this moment, do you think?
Yeah, I talked about it this morning. I think it helped our group a lot to know that we've been able to fight back and find our game. Tonight, over the course of the series, it was a really tough series. It was very evenly played. This was our best game all series, and really proud of the players because this was an opportunity to seize the moment and be difference makers, and I felt everybody had the attitude of wanting to be a difference maker.
Welcome back to Sunday Skate. That was Jim Montgomery post-game last night after the Bruins 2-1 overtime win in Game 7 against Toronto. Talking about how proud he was, how tough of a series it was. And, it did end up, like, I think most people going in expected this to be a pretty even series and a long series. I know I picked Bruins on 7. I thought people were underestimating this year's Leafs team based on history, based on what they remember from 2018-19, which is, 5-6 years ago. Like, that core over there has grown. They beat the Lightning in the playoffs. The Lightning team that everyone still feared. Toronto beat them in the playoffs last year.
Well, but the Bruins had beat them in every game of the regular season, so that's probably where that came from too.
True. Personally, as I said, I don't really think the regular season means all that much. Listen, the Bruins beat the Panthers 4 times in the regular season, so everyone should expect the Bruins to beat the Panthers in 5 or 6 games, right?
I don't think that's
somehow.
What
I don't
think
that's going to be the expectation. So that's kind of what I mean. Like, I don't put a ton of stock in regular season success.
But that I'm just saying that's where confidence
Yes.
came from with all the picks. Like, and obviously we're in Boston, so we have maybe some little bias here. But when you see a team sweep Toronto in the regular season, you're thinking, oh, I don't know why that can't be the same in the playoffs. And it is true. Swayman played great against them in the regular season, and that did continue.
Yeah, and listen, Swayman, I mean, we'll probably find out this next series. Like, he might just be on a heater where he's going to play great against anyone. So that's what you got to hope for, because I think, looking forward, like, if you're going to beat the Panthers, you are going to need him or your goaltending in general to be great. If somehow this ends up going back to Allmark or whatever, however it works out, like, goaltending needs to be a difference in this series, because the Panthers, on paper, look better everywhere else. Like, if we're just going to be realistic about it, they look like a better, deeper team. But the point I was making in Toronto is, like, you can go in thinking that, but then they start to have injuries pile up where Nylander misses the first 2 games, and then Austin Matthews has to leave game 4 and misses 2 games. Wall ends up missing game 7. So, like, that all makes you think, probably should have been shorter, especially because you get up 3-1. So I think the series ended up in a place where, a lot of people who really pay attention expected it to. It's just when you get up 3-1, you expect that to end a lot quicker. So let's go to the phones here. Let's start with Maria from Watertown, of course. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning. Hey, I'm doing what the Toronto Maple Leafs are doing this morning, sorting through my golf clothes. So I want to focus a little bit on Hampus Lindholm and the, hero-type impact that he had on that game last night. That game-tying goal coming so quickly after Toronto went up 1-0, I think was significant and monumental for the Toronto Maple Leafs in a negative way, in that it certainly planted a seed of doubt once again in their heads. And you could see that, they were retreating a little bit with their game. And, there were numerous icings. They didn't get a ton of sustained offensive pressure. So, as someone who called out Hampus Lindholm throughout this series for literally giving you nothing, the nothing that he gave last night between, his play on D and jumping in the play offensively at one point, I think he had the most shots on goal than any other member of the Boston Bruins. I have to applaud him. Now, moving forward, and I know you may talk about this in previewing the next series, I have to ask, what is up with Charlie McAvoy? Because PK Subban alluded to the fact that, there were some players that he was watching that seemed to be not up for the challenge and perhaps soiling themselves a little bit. And I'm pointing towards Charlie McAvoy. He's given you a ton of minutes, but are they impactful minutes at this point? Because he looked a little a deer in the headlights last night, if I dare say that. So, those are my thoughts and my questions for today. And let's enjoy the 24 hours of another miserable season for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, that's true, Maria.
Yeah. Thanks, Maria.
And I want to answer the Lindholm part first before we go to McAvoy. And Maria said him scoring that quickly after made Toronto have that doubt. Well, I think more importantly, it stopped the Bruins from having doubt. They were only really might have been in their head for a minute 20, like I said in trending. It was a minute 21 later that Lindholm scores. The longer you go without tying that game up, the doubt creeps and creeps and creeps. Like, this is just happening again, game 7. So the fact that the strike came right after, and also the fact that you're the team that scored most recently to send it to overtime is different than what happened last year. You have the momentum. You aren't the team that's on their heels necessarily going into overtime, and I think that made a big difference.
Yeah, Lindholm was great last night. Maria mentioned it, 6 shots on goal, most of anyone in the game, not even just most on the Bruins.
From the start, too.
Yeah, Montgomery said Hampus was assertive tonight. He played on his toes. You saw the poise. And you did, both ends of the ice. And obviously he has the assist on Pasternak's game winner, which, it got – someone asked Montgomery postgame and posed it as, like, it's a simple play, right? Like, dump it in, go after it. Yes and no. Like, that was a set play. You can see when Pasternak gets it to Lindholm, Pasternak gives him a look and like almost like points his stick forward, like a wide receiver, like throwing his hand up, like I'm open.
Lead me.
Like they clearly caught each other's attention there, and Lindholm knew Pasternak had all the speed, was gonna win any race. So you can't really. You hope you get that bounce where it goes right to the front. You can't really plan for that, but no matter what, Pasternak was getting there first to at least establish offensive zone time. So it's a heads-up play by Lindholm. He puts it in the perfect spot. And the other thing about that goal, talk about lifting up your partner. Lindholm's always paired with Brandon Carlo. The Leafs' goal right before that comes because Brandon Carlo falls down, honestly just like trips over his own skates. I know fans in the building understandably thought he got tripped. As it turns out, he really didn't. Bertuzzi put some pressure on him, but didn't trip him. Carlo rather just lost his balance and went down. And then it's a 2-on-1 Matthews to Nylander for the goal. Brandon Carlo had a great series.
Yeah.
If that holds up as the series winner, like that's all anyone's going to remember. He's going to be the guy who fell and gave Toronto the series. And Lindholm helps the whole team, scores a great goal, but also picks up his partner there.
Yeah, and there was an earlier point in the game. He got a shot on goal. Trent Frederick almost tipped it in. Like he was just firing. And when we talked to him after the game, first of all, it was the happiest I've ever seen him, obviously, because he had such a big impact. And he was a hero, an unsung hero of that game. And he was talking to us about how it felt so good to play that well in that game because you get the result of making it to round 2, which he hadn't experienced since he's been with Anaheim. So he was saying it's been a while. And so everybody has their own motivation to step up in a Game 7. For him, it was the past and wanting to be back in a deep playoff run that he hadn't been on. For other guys like Brad Marchand, it's, he's the leader. And for Pasternak, wanting to be part of this Bruins core that gets their own Stanley Cup because he doesn't have one yet. So I think every guy on the team had their own motivation. For Lindholm, he spoke to us a little bit after about just wanting to get out of the first round and see if they could really go for a deep run.
Yeah, and that was also, it was Lindholm's first playoff goal as a Bruin, now in his third postseason here. Before the series, he didn't even have a point in the playoffs with the Bruins. He ends up with 4 in this series. So, yeah, he had a couple, subpar games in the middle there, but overall, when you step up, when you're one of the stars of Game 7, like that cements how you're going to be remembered. Like this series now goes down as a clear positive for Hampus Lindholm because of how he finishes it.
I think it goes down as a clear positive for the defense. Like, I think that in the games the Bruins lost in 5 and 6, you could, and I saw the tweets and comments about Lindholm not being at his best, but really who's to blame when you can't score? Offense really was the reason why they couldn't finish out Game 5 and Game 6. So I think the D has been really solid. The Lindholm-Carlo pair has been great. And now we should probably get to the McAvoy thing.
Yeah.
Because that was a weird twist I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. So let's bring in Tom from Boston here, who's calling in on Charlie McAvoy. What's up, Tom?
Good morning, everybody. So my question is, I think it's a mindset thing for Charlie McAvoy. I think when they tell him he's going to play 30 minutes a night, he's like, oh, man, I got to do everything. I got to be the best. Whereas if you get him down to 22, 23, I think he's just another one of the guys, and I think he plays better. Also, real quick, if you don't mind, we got to get rid of the offsides rule, and I say that because Pasternak scores, the team's going wild. Jim Montgomery just saved his job probably, and instead of celebrating, he's looking down at the little screen on his thing, praying that they don't challenge for offsides. It stinks. I don't like it. Thanks very much. Bye.
All right, thanks, Tom. Yeah, we can circle back to the offsides thing, but on McAvoy, because Maria mentioned this as well. Yeah, listen, there's no question. He had some tough plays in Game 7. He had some tough games in this series. He had a couple plays in Game 7 where he just straight up whiffed on the puck. One led to an odd man rush the other way. He had a turnover on the power play on just a bad pass where if he releases it a second earlier, it gets over to Pasternak, no problem, but he kind of holds it a split second too long. It gets picked off, and he's lucky, Toronto's penalty kills were exhausted at that point, so it was just a clear down. If it was someone with more energy, it might have been a breakaway the other way. So, tough series, tough couple games for him.
Well, the thing is too, at one point in time last night, I leaned over to one of the other reporters and I said, I think Mason Lohrei is the better defenseman on this pair tonight. And I never thought I was going to say that. Not because Mason Lohrei, I don't have anything against Mason Lohrei. He's stepped up since he came in the series, but he's a rookie. And Charlie McAvoy has been here before. I just thought that McAvoy was kind of the guy that needed to lift up Lohrei, but at times last night it was the other way around.
Yeah, and Tom mentioned his ice time. In the past, I think McAvoy playing a lot of minutes has been a great thing. I remember Bruce Cassidy would talk about how McAvoy, needed so little rest time. He would get back to the bench, 30 seconds, he'd be ready to go again. And it seemed to just feed into him getting into a rhythm when he would just keep getting back out there. It's a worthwhile point. If you're trying to figure out how to get McAvoy right for this next round, maybe a reduction in minutes could help. I mean, he ends up over 29 last night. I think 5 minutes more than anyone else in the game. So that is a lot of minutes. That's a heavy workload. It could help. Really, I think it's just maybe he can use the opportunity of a start of a new round as a reset.
I want him to come out like Torrey Krug in 2019. I just want him to come out and just take every shot, lay every check, open ice, just give this team energy. Because
I do think he's brought the physicality. I still think that's been there. I think he's...
Yes, but a big statement hit, an open ice big statement clean. But he can do that, and I feel like he's been physical, right? He has hits, but none of them were turning points in a game.
Well, game 6 is hit on Holmberg behind the net. That was a pretty big one. That made a splash.
They did not win that game.
Could have potentially been an elbow that he might have gone away with a little, but nonetheless. But yeah, to me with McAvoy, though, it's just more poise. And again, maybe a new series, maybe advancing, allows him, a mental reset of clean slate, new series. Because to me, what stands out is it's not, I definitely don't think it's an effort thing with McAvoy. It's been those misplays with the puck on his stick, some poor decision making. A couple times last night, I think he had a shooting lane and almost held on too long or moved in a way where it closed the shooting lane. And it's that feels like just your timing, your confidence being off. You're just not seeing the ice, the way you expect a player like Charlie McAvoy to see it.
Well, and I've seen him in the offense be most effective there was some odd man rushes or just plays on the rush that he drove to the net and he creates a rebound and he actually creates a pretty dangerous scoring chance when he was driving to the net. But from the point, his decision-making has been worse than usual, I guess you could say, and his shots were not getting through in Game 6 at all, which, credit to Toronto, they blocked a lot of shots, but you got to find better lanes to the net. He wasn't. My last thing I want to say about the defense before we hit a break, I don't need to see Matt Grzelcyk again.
Nico's giving, you can't see, Nico give you a thumbs up behind
Two
the glass.
thumbs up. 2 thumbs
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably agree with you. To me, at this point, Grizzly is clearly a depth defender. Like, I can't imagine Florida's going to be the series where you put him back in. Like, if anything, if there's any change on the blue line for Florida, maybe it's
Forbort.
Forbort or Andrew Peak, maybe when he gets cleared. Peak was on the ice for morning skate Saturday. It's the first time he's been with the full team. He was not cleared to play last night, so he's not quite an option yet.
I feel like he's like a mid-series return, mid to late series.
Yeah, so this kind of ties into one of the texts we got. So someone texted in about Carlo, which we already touched on, but the last part of the text was, please leave Shattenkirk in the rest of the series, or, assume he means the next series. And listen, like, Shattenkirk does bring value, and I think game 1, I kind of think you have to start with the same lineup. Like, I don't really think there's a matchup change you would make just yet, but I could see a scenario where if you're looking for more size, like Peak or Forbort potentially comes in, early on if you feel like things aren't really working with Shattenkirk, but certainly for now, like, you can keep Shattenkirk in and see how this goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think Peak didn't lose the job. Like, Peak wouldn't have lost the job in this series if he didn't get injured. So Shattenkirk, we might not have even seen him at all in the series if Peak stayed healthy.
Well, if you remember, they started the series with Shattenkirk in over Wotherspoon, so that's another option.
True, I guess.
Is, that Shattenkirk Peak pairing where Shattenkirk's on his offside.
Wotherspoon's playing so well, too, though.
He did.
He's shutting players down. I've been impressed. For a guy that we didn't know who he was to start the season, to come in and play really important minutes and do what he's been doing.
Okay, we do have to catch a break here, but we got offsides comments, so maybe I guess we'll touch on that.
A few calls.
617-779-7937. Text us 37937. We'll be right back on Sunday Skate.
A big night at the Garden. Breaking down a Game 7 win over the Leafs. This is Sunday Skate on WEEI.
With Jimmy, he said the stuff he did after, was it after Game 6? And, I told him, like, if I'm the coach and you or me, I would say the same thing. So I had no problem with him saying that. He's trying to bring the best out of every single player, and he expects more. And how I said, I just took it as a man, and tried to be better. I admit it, I need to be better, and I still have ways to be better.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's the right thing to say, right?
Yep. That's David Pastrnak after Game 7 last night, after he scores the overtime winner. Had been under criticism, had been called out by his head coach, Jim Montgomery. Got some Pastrnak reaction on the text line. Do you think Pasta's goal will give him confidence moving forward? I mean, it should. It should. Those are like career-defining type goal. Everyone wants to score Game 7 overtime.
If they win a Stanley Cup after this is going in the highlight montage of how we got here.
Well, yeah, of course.
Like,
but it's going on Pasternak's career highlights regardless. Like that's
and people
that's
will
a big
forget
one.
about the other stuff that happened in the series where, they might remember him being called up, but they're not going to remember the games where he just fumbled pucks. And, like, that's not what it's going to be remembered for if this ends up being a story run, a fairy tale run to the ending here.
Right. And this is where, those of us who defend Pasternak's past playoff performance, we're fighting an uphill battle this week because, listen, he did struggle in, at the very least, games 5 and 6. He was not very good. I thought he was okay before that. I thought he was engaged physically, but this is where, like, I like to point out, even he gets ripped for his performance last year in the first round. He scored twice in Game 6, including a go-ahead goal in the third period. He scored another go-ahead goal in the third period of Game 7. it wasn't his fault the Bruins blew those leads. Like, had they won either of those games, he's the hero last year as well. So, you know, this idea that like he never steps up in the playoffs is just very easy to prove to be false. But he was quiet in this particular series, and he was very quiet in 2 previous closeout games in 5 and 6, which is why Montgomery calls him out. But he steps up in overtime. Like, that's, you know, again, great play by Lindholm to send him in, but Pasternak's the one who sets it up, who sees he has the lane, who takes off at full speed, and then finishes, of course. Like, yes, gets a good bounce, but you still got to finish that at a high rate of speed. That's a goal scorer's finish.
And you want to know what the comment that we just heard tells me about Pastrnak and also just the relationship of the players to Jim Montgomery? That when he calls them out, they're not sitting around hurt about it. They're doing the right thing. They're responding the right way, Pastrnak included, and they know they could do better. It's not like in the past where we were talking about Bruce Cassidy maybe being a little bit, going over the line with Grzelcyk was something that was reported behind the scenes and wasn't liked by players. Well, when Jim Montgomery called out Pastrnak, he didn't react by being upset about it and thinking that it was wrong. Like, the players are responding to his coaching style when he's a little bit tougher this year than he had to be last year. And by the way, he keeps his job, right? Like, we were talking about potentially if Bruins lose Game 7, Jim Montgomery might not be in Boston next year. And
I would say almost certainly would not have been in Boston next year.
And guess what? He was reasonably excited after the Game 7 win, not just because they're on to the next round, it's exciting, it's the playoffs, but because he gets to keep his job.
Yes, and so on the call-out, so another text here from the 603, many people on this station said Montgomery was wrong for calling out Pastrnak to step up. All those folks better eat their words come tomorrow. Well, and this...
Did people say that?
There was a little bit, but there was also a lot of support for him because I think a lot of people agreed. With Montgomery doing that, I did think there was a little bit of desperation in that move in the sense that, if they're still up in the series and they hadn't just blown a 3-1 lead to get to Game 7, if they hadn't done that last year, if his job wasn't on the line, maybe he doesn't say that. Maybe he ends that quote earlier, doesn't include that one last line, Pasta needs to step up. But, so it did, to an extent, feel to me like a coach who has tried everything else, has kind of played every other card in his deck, and feels like, this is one of the last things I can try is call out the star player who yes, is clearly struggling, but knows he's struggling. Like, Pastrnak didn't need to be, I don't think he needed to be called out by Montgomery to realize, like, oh, I have to be better. I think he already knew that. But it does mean, like, it gets your attention when it comes from Montgomery for a couple of reasons. One, as you said, he doesn't do it much, like hardly at all.
Very player-friendly reputation.
Yeah, whereas Bruce Cassidy did obviously do it more. But, two, it's because it's Pastrnak. And one of the other criticisms of Cassidy, and I don't want this to be like a pile on Cassidy. He's a great coach, and he won the Stanley Cup last year. But one of the other irritations there was that it felt like Cassidy's call-outs were often middle to bottom of the roster guys. And if a top player had a bad game or a bad stretch, they usually didn't get called out. I can't think of hardly any times, maybe ever, that you would hear Cassidy call out a Bergeron or Marchand or Pastrnak or McAvoy. And obviously those guys don't give you a lot of reason to call them out, but it's like the old Belichick thing where he would criticize Tom Brady in a team meeting because it kind of sends the message to the rest of the team that, like, hey, if Brady can get called out, then, then we all got to respond. Like, we all got to step up, like, wow, like, he's calling out Brady. I think this also kind of sends that message not just to Pastrnak, but to the rest of the team, where it's like, okay, like, if he's calling out Pastrnak, he's been our best player all year. Like, where would we be without Pastrnak? So if Pastrnak needs to step up, like, what do the rest of us have to do? We all have to step up.
Yeah, and Montgomery saves his job. Sheldon Keefe, that might have been the last press conference he does after a Leafs game. That might be his last, the last we've heard of him in Toronto. It feels like that's the inevitable. I have no idea when they would want to time an announcement like that, but it feels like one of those guys saved their job, and his players saved his job in a way, by doing what they hadn't done in Game 5 and 6. And the other one just watched his job end in overtime.
All right, we got to catch a break here. Hour 2 of Sunday Skate coming up with Razor. Razor calling in right after this break. We'll be right back.
This is Sunday Skate with Scott McLaughlin, Andrew Razor Raycroft, and Bridget Prue on WEEI.
You had said, Jim, the other day that you wanted to see everyone kind of take the nod from Swayman in the way that he was playing. What did you see from him tonight, and how much did he lead the way for you guys in this one?
Well, I mean, he was our best player in the series. It's not close, right? And I think that his confidence and his swagger, I think it permeated through the group. It took a while, but it got there.
Welcome back to Sunday Skate. Morning after a Game 7 overtime win for the Bruins, 2-1 over the Maple Leafs. That's Jim Montgomery, of course, talking about Jeremy Swayman, Bruins' best player in the series, number 1 goalie. We, of course, now bring in our number 1 goalie, Andrew Raycroft. Razor, y'all done packing your bathing suit and beach towel and everything for Florida?
Yeah, just don't tell my wife I'm going on vacation. It's a completely strictly work business trip, according in our house.
If that's the case, don't come back with a suntan or a sunburn because she'll know you were lying.
Yeah, the flip flops are packed. Sorry, I cannot be in there this morning. It is certainly a hectic morning, but a very happy morning. I can hear your voice, Scotty. Like the relief is there for all of us. I think that was wild last night.
You should have seen him last night though, before they won. He wasn't in this mood, Razor. I was thinking, like, you got to have more optimism. Like, Razor would have a lot of optimism right now. Was there any point last night, Razor, where you thought that this wasn't going to go the Bruins' way? Were you optimistic holding on for most of the game? Do you have any doubt at some point?
No, I couldn't lie and say that. Like, I didn't feel great all day. I really liked the way the Leafs were playing. I thought they played really well in Game 6, and then in Game 7, I was the Bruins had a great first. They were getting shots, but I really thought, okay, the Leafs are going to either fold the tent or they're going to play great. And I thought they played great, and I was like, oh, boy, they're going to hang around here. And of course, 1-0 with 10 minutes left in the third. I've lost a Game 7 1-0 in that building, and that's exactly what it felt like. I had a text from a few old friends that were like, this feels like 04. And I left where I was. I didn't see Lindholm's goal because when they scored, I was like, oh boy, I got to go upstairs. I'm just out of here. I'm switching it up. And I was in the elevator and I came out and I heard the screaming. So once it went 1-1, I felt better.
Razor.
But 0-0, I didn't feel good, and 1-0, I really didn't feel good.
I think that means that in Games 3 and 4, you're just going to have to sit in the elevator.
I won't be watching. Yeah, I'm literally won't be watching in 3 and 4 for sure.
And Razor, you mentioned 04. The other game I thought of because they brought up on the broadcast was Game 7 against Tampa, 2011, the Eastern Conference Finals. The ABC broadcast noted that was the last time the Bruins were in a Game 7 that was 0-0 after 2 periods. And, of course, that took just 1 goal to win with Krejci setting up Nathan Horton. It felt especially as that third period went on, it felt like this was going to be a 1-goal wins it type of game. And had it been after Carlo just stepping on the puck or tripping over himself or whatever it was, leading to that goal, like that would have been such a devastating way to go. So for them to respond right away, goal from Lindholm, that third line of Brazo, Frederick, Van Riemsdyk was great all night, and they set that up with that offensive zone shift. Like, it was a response that really told you a lot. And by the way, another huge save from Swayman in between. The Leafs got a 3-on-2 there, and maybe you're fortunate that it's Joel Edmondson who ends up with the scoring chance and not Matthews or Nylander, but nonetheless a big save there.
Huge. That was huge, and there was so much talk of mentally tough after last night's game and how mentally tough they were, and they stayed with. And I think that swing tough for Jeremy, who was the MVP of the series, to not let up. And it could be easy to do because of that kind of a game where, and I promise you at some point he was thinking, if I can't give up any goals tonight. And when you do, and for him to stay with it and make that save on Edmonton was huge. And you're right on the Carlo thing. Like, that was by the time when the Leafs were playing well and this was a close game, and 2011 and 2004, you're thinking, all right, next goal wins. These guys really, you guys are around these guys enough. They really didn't deserve to be smoked like they would have been had they lost that game. Like, Brandon Carlo, for what he's done for this team this season, this series, didn't deserve to be the GOAT that fell in the corner and had that go against him. Like, all of these things, that was my thought process. And, okay, how are we communicating this if they do lose? Because this wouldn't have been – Toronto played really well. They did not give this series up, the Bruins. I thought Toronto got themselves back into it, and the players themselves just didn't deserve the criticism they were going to get. So for that, I'm, very happy that these guys survived it, got to the next round. I think that relief will show the next couple of days here in Florida.
Yeah, and I think the criticism of Pasta would have been very bad had that game ended with the Bruins losing and Pasternak not making a difference in that game. But Razor, how did you feel he handled being called out by Jim Montgomery and his response in Game 7?
Well, it was perfect. It was, especially afterwards, it was perfect. He took all of it, and of course, it's a little easier when you score the overtime winner in Game 7 to be more humble. But he did a wonderful job with that. That's the kind of guy he is. Some of the and the reports get a little crazy, right? We all know that. But you guys, again, have been around him the last week. Like, he wasn't unhappy. He was unhappy about the fact that they were playing Game 7 and didn't close out in Game 5. He was unhappy that he hadn't scored or produced, but he wasn't unhappy with the situation or where he is or what was going on. And I think he communicated that very well after the game. And it was they needed to make one play. The best players need to make one play. McAvoy was great all night. Lindholm showed up in a huge way. The goal was cheeky, and then the bank pass was perfect. Could not have been 3 inches one way or the other. It was absolutely perfect. And then who else? Like you said, you don't want Edmondson with that chance. Well, guess what? You want David Pasternak to. Not many guys can just pull it off the boards and make that move. Like, that's world class, and that's why you have them. That's why you play them for those moments, and that'll be something that David will grow from as well. Like, that's big for him as much as the team.
Razor, a little bigger picture on Jeremy Swayman, because this is, he gets to run with a series for the first time. We talked, obviously Allmark got Game 2, but Swayman starts the other 6. He finally gets his signature win in a Game 7. He had lost Game 7 the previous 2 years. There's the contract situation coming up, all that. But what does this mean for Jeremy Swayman as a still young goaltender, building his career, to now have this kind of signature win, signature series, and not, a third straight Game 7 loss?
Yeah, I don't know what it means on the upside now. But what I do know is similar to what I was just talking about deserving. He did not deserve to be 0-3 in Game 7. And you go 0-3 in Game 7s, now it's hard to be a Game 7 guy. right? Like you have to, what are the chances he's going to play 4 more game 7s if he loses last night to get over 500 in a game 7 situation? So it was huge for him because of what it means, and going forward, there's no question he's going to play more playoff games and more series, and he's going to lean on that game last night and really how the last 8 or 9 days have gone for him. And he really proved his medal, his worth for this team, and where he kind of stands not only now regular season in the NHL among goaltenders, but now in the playoffs. So, again, I was worried that he was going to go 0-3 undeservedly. And I'm 0-1, but I know that 0-3 would be really hard to come back from.
I got 2 more goalie questions for you, Razor. First of all, it seemed like at the end of Game 6, that goal by Morgan Geekie didn't really mean all that much. It was just a last-ditch effort. But it looked like Joseph Woll got hurt on that play. He doesn't play Game 7. Do you think there's a different outcome if Samsonov isn't in net? Do you think Samsonov played well? Do you think that the Woll injury helped the Bruins?
I think Samsonov played really well last night. That was his best game. Again, the Bruins didn't get to the inside very much. They didn't have a lot of scoring chances. They didn't get out on the rush like they had in the first couple of games. The Leafs were doing a great job. I do think, though, it was a 2-1 game in overtime, so I don't know if the outcome changes, but it had to have changed the feeling around the room. It had to have added a little bit of distraction for the Maple Leafs. It had to have added just a little bit of annoyance, like, man, are we really doing this? And how did that happen? And it's back to the Geekie goal. Like, I was actually, the way games 5 and 6 went, I was so aggravated by that goal. Like, I was like, they shouldn't have got a goal there. Like, that means, they probably should have held the goose egg over their heads and I thought it was a nothing play. And then sure enough, pregame skate, Joe Walls splitting net with Martin Jones, and that was curious and odd. And Samsonov's down at the other end on his own. I was wondering why, but I was like, maybe he's just conserving. He's a little tired, whatever. And you get the report. So it certainly couldn't have helped the Leafs situation with Joe Wall playing the way he was. For him to be the guy, the momentum guy that changed the series, to have to go back to Samsonov, not physically, but just mentally and emotionally for the group.
Yeah, it was odd. Like after morning skate, Geekie was asked a couple questions about that goal and was like, can you build off it? Or, do you think breaking up Wall's shutout meant something? And I was sort of like, that seems like a little weird to like. I felt like I was like, it felt like it didn't matter at all. And then it turns out to be pretty significant, at least in terms of forcing the goalie change for Game 7. Razor, now, I think I'm going to be on your side here. I would just keep rolling with Swayman until he gives me a reason not to. But quick turnaround here before Game 1 of the second round. Ullmark was really good against Florida in the regular season. Is there any chance Ullmark's getting Game 1 or maybe Game 2? Or does this continue to be Swayman's net?
So they had a plan, right? We saw the plan in the first round. It feels like they could do that again. It feels like the way the schedule set up, of course, playing tomorrow night is an extremely quick turnaround. You talked about Linus. And also the game Wednesday, right? You're playing every other night here this round. So I thought they were going to grab 2 days. I assumed it would go Wednesday, Saturday, but the league's going to bang it out here. So I'm actually I want to reserve the right. I want to get a little bit of a feel here the next couple of days, but I would be actually more surprised if we don't see Ullmark in the first 2 games. That was my quick judgment last night, my quick feel last night. It is hard to take Swayman out, but because of the way they placed this at the start of the year or at the start of the playoffs, it might be a good time to do it. Like if there's a time to give them a blow, it's got to be early in this round. And with the back-to-back or the every other day, I think we actually do see Ullmark here early in the series. That would be my first guess. But As you know, I wouldn't, it would take a lot for me to take this guy out of the net right now, but they did say they've got a plan, and we saw the plan in the first round, and we might see it here.
Yeah, I agree. I think we probably see exactly what we saw at the beginning of round one. But then what do you like?
So
then,
do you go? So Bridget, do you go Allmark game one, or do you go Swayman game one?
Me? You're asking what I would do if I was coaching?
Yeah.
To be honest, it's just so hard to go away from Swayman, but he might need the rest. That's the only thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we need Fourier to call in and tell us what he thinks.
Oh, gee, yeah. He's definitely talked to goalie Bob this morning for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Got the scoop.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's where he gets his information from.
The good news is, guys, right, with a series win, it's not an issue now. I don't feel like it's amazing what a win does, like what these series does. Like it just changes the vibe. It changes everything in that these decisions are less pressure filled, and you can feel like you can get away with them one way or the other. So again, it changes just a little bit than what we saw in the first round. So that's a positive.
Do you think that Jim Montgomery saved his job?
Oof. I don't know about that. I think the regular season and what he did with this group this year speaks for itself. Of course, losing 2 3-1 leads wasn't going to be something that he put at the top of his resume either. So fortunately, we don't have to do that this morning, because I was really not looking forward to having to do that yet. So I don't know, but I know that now he's good. How about that?
Razor, there's one last thing I want to circle back, because we actually got a couple texts about it, but you said you really liked McAvoy's game last night. We were pretty critical of him in the first hour. I thought he had a couple rough plays where he just mishandled the puck or made poor decisions. Couple texts pushing back on you. What did you like about McAvoy's game?
30 minutes of ice time. Starting there, I thought he was physical. Listen, it's the old David Pasternak, Connor turnovers. Oh, he turns the puck over. Well, he has the puck more than everybody else in the National Hockey League. So you're going to make bobbles. You're going to make plays. I would suggest that because of those bobbles and because of some of those mishandles from McAvoy, that his ability to fight through that and play through that for 30 minutes, he should have shot it in the second period. Oh, my God, how do you try and make a pass on that power play? There was some of that, but again, it's that mental toughness, that fighting through that and continuing to push through it. So I guess that's where I'm coming from with McAvoy. It wasn't Bobby Orr out there, but it wasn't. Again, he played 30 minutes. That's a huge load, a huge ask. Basically 5 defensemen, and he was up against the big boys all the way through. So you play 30 minutes as a number one defenseman, and your team wins 2-1 in overtime against Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all those guys. Like that's a pretty solid game.
All right.
Wait, I want to get Razor's take before he goes. Now they're off to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So just a quick preview, your thoughts on what that's going to take to beat Florida this year, because they seem like they're even better than last year.
Yeah, they're better. Yeah, yes, and they're certainly, they had a vibe going last year, so we'll see how this layoff goes for them and what kind of feeling they have. They're better than Toronto. That's for sure. Now, I said it in post game, and I've thought about this the last 4 days, that the way Toronto played in game 5, 6, and 7 is essentially Florida Panther hockey. The dump-ins, the clogging the middle, the blocking shots, that is going to help the Bruins. I think they have been in Florida Panther playoff hockey grinded out now for 3 games. It wasn't like high-flying Maple Leafs, and now all of a sudden, holy smokes, we're going to get forechecked. The Leafs did an unbelievable job of forechecking and playing playoff-style, Florida Panther-style hockey here. So I think these close games, getting through it, lends themselves really well for the Bruins. I think they have an opportunity to jump out quickly. Florida's been sitting on their hands for a week. And beyond that, they're in one. It's going to be a tough series. can they get to Bobrovsky? That's the big difference of Toronto and Florida, is that Florida's goalie can actually steal games. He's not just going to manage. He's not just going to hang in there. He's going to actually be a difference maker. And can the Bruins, the Zakas, the Coyles, can they find the back of the net? That's going to be the big question. But I think the way the series went against Toronto, I think it lends itself to the Bruins being ready right at puck drop to play the Florida Panthers.
And by the way, Razor, happy birthday. I know your birthday was yesterday, Star Wars Day. I didn't want to forget it. I had a birthday crown ready for you. Would you have worn it?
Yeah, sure.
Scott did.
You know, as I get old, I mean, I don't really love my birthday. I'm not a birthday guy, but you know, you get older, you lean into those things a little bit more, I guess. So I appreciate it. Thank you for remembering me.
Yes, and have a great trip in Florida.
Yes, enjoy the beach on the off day between games.
Oh no, it's straight swamp, guys. I'm out at the rink. There's no, it's gonna be. It's straight Sawgrass Mills swamp action.
Sure. He's gonna come
nice
back.
Mall.
He's gonna come back with like the sunglass tan lines, like like raccoon eyes. Like.
Oh no, I'm gonna definitely get some vitamin C and D and all that, whatever the sun gives us. I am gonna be in the sun as much as I can. So we got Game 4 next Sunday, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll be doing a preview show. 3 games into the series by that point.
Probably an afternoon game. Probably an afternoon game too. So we might be going straight from studio to the Garden. So.
You're gonna have to run.
Works for me. All right, thanks a lot, Razor. Enjoy Florida, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Yeah, sorry again, I'm not there. Great show. We'll talk next week.
No problem. I blame Brian Zaccello.
Thank you. Please do. Yeah. He's listening right now. I guarantee
I know.
it too.
I know he is.
Yeah,
all right.
For sure.
Bridget has you trending. We'll be right back after this.
History repeats itself again as the Bees eliminate the Leafs. Now focus shifts to the Panthers. This is Sunday Skate on WEEI.
You know, we were together last night. It's not a secret. And, you know, we watched video. We met as a group. And Shaddy gave the group an incredible speech that really allowed us to kind of settle down and understand, you know, where we were at and how we had to play and what we needed to believe to get the job done. And we woke up this morning, you could just see within the group that, you know, we knew that everybody was going to bring their best game and everyone was going to do their job, and they did. You know, so there was a confidence throughout the group this morning, and you felt it, and you could see it on guys' faces, and it didn't seem like anyone was nervous. It felt like guys were excited for the opportunity. So, yeah, you're right. You know, Lonnie was right with the way that he said guys were excited and were confident, and it showed.
Welcome back to Sunday Skate. Scott McLaughlin here with Bridget Prue. Nico behind the glass. We just had Razor on for an extended segment. He's about to hop on the team plane for his NESN duties down to Florida.
You know what, though? I think that Monday and Tuesday are actually supposed to be really nice here. So I'm not as jealous as I would be if this was in the winter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I went down there in March when the Bruins were down to Tampa and Sunrise. And that was, I was going to say, that was the week it was like 40s and raining up here. So, like, that made me feel good. I was like, you know, March isn't quite winter either, but there was winter weather up here, so I still felt good about getting away. By
the way, I want to mention this about when the Bruins come back home. There's a Tim McGraw concert that's going to affect the time of one of these games, right? I saw was that Tim McGraw has a concert Friday night at 7 o'clock at TD Garden.
Well, that's getting rescheduled.
Yeah, so something has to give with what's going on at TD Garden on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean the NHL already announced the schedule, so it's got to be that concert's getting moved.
Yeah, he could maybe do it the next day. He doesn't have another tour date, but I don't know. Maybe that has to get moved to Saturday for him. But that could be, I mean, if you have Tim McGraw tickets, just keep that on just know that one of those things is going to have to either, I don't know if they'd be able to have time to do an afternoon game on a Friday for the Bruins. I don't
a
think
night
that's
game.
going to happen.
No.
So,
Yeah,
Tim
no, the
McGraw
concert,
tickets.
if there's a concert schedule, it's getting moved. Like that happens quite a bit during the playoffs because, especially a place like the Garden where you have Bruins and Celtics going, like, yeah, there has to be some flexibility.
Yeah, maybe just plan to go Saturday, guys, if you have those tickets.
Yeah, because Celtics will be home Tuesday and Thursday, so they'll be gone Saturday. So that was coming back from break there. We just heard Brad Marchand talking about the team staying in a hotel instead of sleeping in their own beds, which is new for this team in the sense that that's not what they did earlier in the series. It's not a completely new idea in general. Like we over the years, you hear about other teams that do this to try to, just to bring everyone together and not have people going off their separate ways. Don't have any, not that you want to like call people's families a distraction, but like, we're not going to go like Mike Milbury here, but
no,
but like just to bring everyone together, like Jim Montgomery. In retrospect, you could almost see this coming because Jim Montgomery talked about, I think it was between games 5 and 6. It was after the loss in game 5. And he talked about how like when you're on the road, it's you're just more together as a team. And like all you're talking about is hockey. And there's nothing else to pull you in this direction or that direction. You're just with your teammates and like that just creates that natural bonding.
And I remember the Chicago Blackhawks did this on one of their cup runs. And I think it was the year that they won. It was one of the years that they won because they were looking to get kind of that road feel in a home game. I do remember that, and it's worked for different coaches in the past. I mean, I believe this is something that Bill Belichick has done on occasion.
NFL teams do it a lot.
Yeah.
Players stay, even for home games, will stay in like a hotel by the stadium Saturday night.
Yeah. So this is a move that, and Jim Montgomery mentioned that he, in his time talking to Belichick, one of the things he learned from him was how important it is to block out the outside noise and some of the ways that Belichick did it. And he said that in the exact same context as talking about putting them up in a hotel. So I think it's interesting to me how all the Boston coaches really do learn stuff from each other. And I think that you'll hear a lot of the people who had a chance to talk to Belichick talk about what they learned from him. Even going back several Bruins coaches, Bruce Cassidy talked about that as well. So Jim Montgomery, and I know Bill Belichick is not the coach anymore, but he hasn't provided some information to other Boston coaches that they at least feel confident enough to try and use it.
Yeah, 978 texter says concert is now on Wednesday, and they're offering refunds to anyone who can't make it. So there you go. There's your Tim McGraw news from Sunday Skate.
Yeah, didn't know that's where the show was going, but
yeah, I also thought it was really cool that Kevin Shattenkirk was the one to step up and give a speech that apparently made an impact because this team obviously lost a lot of leadership last summer with Bergeron and Krejci retiring, Nick Foligno, departing as he would have been gone in free agency anyways, but as part of the Taylor Hall trade. And part of the reason why Sweeney brought in veterans was to have other leader. Obviously Marchand's your captain. Pasternak and McAvoy are that next wave, the alternate captains, the future of the team. But you need other leaders, other guys with experience beyond that. And that's why you bring in a Kevin Shattenkirk, a James Van Riemsdyk. Obviously, Milan Lucic was supposed to be part of that. That didn't work. Eventually, trade deadline, you get Pat Maroon to fill that similar kind of role. But this is why, is you get guys who have been through the battles and who, the Bruins always want, part of like the Bruins culture we hear about is they always want to encourage anyone to speak up if you have something to say. Like you hear stories from time to time about young guys who will step up and say something. But like Shattenkirk's one of those guys where when he decides like he wants to speak up, I think he's earned a level of trust and respect from this team throughout the season, even though it's his first year here, because guys know like he's gone through it. He's been around the league for 14 years. He's won a cup. So even though he's a guy who's been in and out of the lineup at times this year, even in the series, game 5, he was a healthy scratch. Like, he still felt comfortable enough to step up in that situation before the biggest game of a lot of these guys' careers, and they respect him enough to listen. Which
has also happened in Nick Foligno when he was with the Bruins. And to me, they are not similar players in their style, and Foligno's obviously very physical. Shattenkirk's more finesse, two different positions, but it strikes me how similar they are when it comes to speaking. Because Nick Foligno last year and the year before you could ask him anything and he would give you the longest answer, and it was always good. It was always accurate. He seemed like somebody who could speak up, no problem. Same with Kevin Shattenkirk. I feel like he just, when he wants to talk, he has the right thing to say, and he's been around for a long time. I want to mention what you said about Pat Maroon and another player who we know, especially in Game 1, it was talked about quite a bit, started speaking on the bench, try to get people in the right mindset. He was very good in Game 1. He went a little bit quiet throughout the rest of the series. Not that they're looking for a whole lot for him besides to bring the physicality. It feels like round 2 against Florida is a really important series that you might start to see what he really can bring in a playoff run, more so than you saw against Toronto.
Yeah, for sure. You know it's going to be a very physical series. We know Florida loves to mix it up after whistles. And, look, Pat Maroon's probably not going to see a ton of ice time against Matthew Tkachuk, but he'll see ice time against Nick Cousins, Ryan Lomberg, whoever else Florida throws out kind of in their bottom 6 there, because those guys mix it up as much as Tkachuk. And Tkachuk's one, your top players need to answer Tkachuk because they're the ones who are going to be out there against him. But those other guys, they're the ones who, they might stand over Swayman for a second longer. They might give McAvoy a little jab as he goes by or whatever. That's the stuff where, having a Pat Maroon on the ice helps negate some of that, or at least gives you someone who's going to answer it, if it does happen.
It did feel like last year there were times in that series with Florida that the Bruins were getting pushed around, bullied. It almost felt like being bullied.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen when Maroon's on the ice.
No, he certainly helps negate some of it. Again, you had Foligno last year. I think he also helps with that. Again, they're also different players.
They're different.
Different things. But, nonetheless, just in a physical series in general where emotions are going to be turned up so high, I do think that's the situation where Maroon thrives, and it's a big reason why you brought him in. So
I want to read you something. So Brian Zaccello was listening, is listening, and he texted me. It wasn't anything mean about you. He actually texted me, Claude and Peter Chiarelli used to use team hotels in the playoffs.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't covering the team that time, but I thought they might have. So yeah, that makes sense. We got a couple texts. So I asked Razor about who he start Game 1. Someone said, a 205 texter, can we name our Game 1 goalie? I sort of mentioned it in my question to Razor, but I would go Swayman. I'm riding Swayman until I was as pro rotation as anyone, but
yes, you were.
I'm riding Swayman until he gives me a reason not to. Listen, if Swayman's great in Game 1, I'm going back to him and I get the idea of you might want to use both goalies early in the series, but if Swayman can handle the workload and just keep riding this high, I'm not breaking that up until he has. I would say if he comes out Game 1 and he's okay, not bad, but not the great Swayman we saw against Toronto, then I'd probably go Allmark in Game 2 and yes, give Swayman that breather. But to start, I'm sticking with Swayman.
If you were still calling for the goalie rotation at this point, you'd probably be the only person in Boston. Is there anyone out there right now that genuinely thinks now is the time to do that? Because I feel like that's gone away. So
I really could have carved out a spot for myself if I continued to just lean into it.
You could have been that outsider opinion rebel, Scott, but everybody would have told you you're wrong because you would be. But but you didn't die on that hill. You thought about it, but you came off it. You went Team Swayman. And I am with you. I think we all three of us, me, you, and Razor, all agree. Swayman until maybe he lets you know he needs rest, or maybe he has an off night, but it's got to be Swayman.
Yes. All right. We got to catch our final break here. We'll wrap up Sunday Skate next. I see Jay in North Carolina has been on the line a while. If you hang on, I promise we'll get to you after the break. You can join us this last segment, 617-779-7937. Text in 37937. We'll be right back.
Breaking down a Game 7 win over the Leafs. This is Sunday Skate on WEEI.
You don't want to practice. You want to play. I mean, we're feeling really good about our game. We're playing well. So it's great to be able to jump into another series quickly. I'd say the toughest part about this game and the transition between this game and next series is that we're obviously riding a big high, and we have to completely forget about it starting tomorrow morning. So, but that's the great thing about playoffs is, we earned another 4 games, but now we have to completely flip the script and get prepared again. So, that's all the best teams come this time of year are able to forget that game. The next morning, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's about the next one. And, gave ourselves an opportunity to move forward and play another incredible team that watched first round, they absolutely dominated. They're a very, very difficult matchup. So, another opportunity to be excited about it and a great challenge ahead of us.
All right. Welcome back to Sunday Skate. That was Brad Marchand talking about turning the page to Florida, which the Bruins have to do right away because Game 1 is Monday night down in Sunrise. Jay in North Carolina is still on the line. I said we'd get to him, so we'll do that right now. What's up, Jay?
Hey, guys. I don't mind being on hold because I really enjoy your program. I've said it before. You guys run a tight ship. Good job.
Thank you.
But anyways, you're missing an integral part of Razor, but if he comes back with a tan, you'll know it wasn't all business as usual. But at any rate, it isn't the Pasternak show. There's a team out there, and he's just a small integral part of the team. And I look at the Toronto series. Toronto's a good team, not a great team, a good team. And Boston seems to play down to any level that they're at. Well, don't do that with Florida Panthers, I can tell you that. I will tell you this. I said that those teams that win the President's Cup do not normally go on to win the Stanley Cup. But another gem is this, is those teams that have a layoff, they win 4 games or 4 games to 1. They tend to stagnate. And the Bruins have gone the total length of the series, 7 games. They're ready. They're primed. But don't play down to the Florida Panthers team, I tell you right now, or the series will be over in 4 games. They need to bring their A game and show what they can do. And as I say, it's not the Pasternak show. It's the Boston Bruins show. Thanks, guys, and I don't mind waiting. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jay. Yeah, listen, there's no playing down to the Panthers. They're the favorites. They're the better roster on paper. So, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Now, what Marchand said there as we were coming out of break is accurate. The Panthers dominated the first round against Tampa. They won that series in 5 games. Completely controlled play, 5-on-5. Now, I'll say this. We had mentioned when it looked like the Bruins might play Tampa, the Lightning were a bad 5-on-5 team this year. Not just a not good team. They were bad 5-on-5. The Bruins are a better 5-on-5 team, so I think they can do better there. They've played well against the Panthers. They're the underdogs for sure. Bridget, I don't know if you have any early pick. Like, I as we said here right now, would pick the Panthers to win this series, but Bruins can embrace being the underdog. And, Jay mentioned it. Like, they're riding high right now. So they do have some momentum going into this Game 1 that can maybe help combat that quick turnaround.
Do I have to pick?
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean,
you have to pick right now.
Jeez. I like the Panthers in the series. But I don't like saying that. And I just want to enjoy the series, right? Because we didn't get this last year. We didn't get round 2. So I'm just trying to enjoy the extra hockey that we have, because when it ends, I'm like an addict. I get withdrawals. I just am sitting around not having any idea what to do with myself. So I'm just happy that this has continued so that I'm not quite there yet. And I do want to shout out the PWHL Boston team also won to extend their season yesterday. I broadcast that game, then ran over to TD Garden real quick. So that both 2 wins, a big day for Boston hockey. So now the PWHL Boston team makes the playoffs, which is nice. And Bruins win and they move on to another round. So we get more hockey. I get more games. You know, it's great. I think it was a good day for hockey in the city. Can I say something before we go? I was dying laughing at a text we just got in, because there's one text we got that said, I would start Hallmark in game 1 against the Panthers. He owns the Panthers just like Swan owns the Maple Leafs. And then we get another, I was already laughing at it. Then we get another one just after that says, I personally would give the start to Walmart game 1 and give swimming a little breather. So
hey, listen, we all get auto-corrected.
Autocorrect really was not
by the
working.
way, I will quickly touch on 2 texts here. Someone's 978, so glad the Bruins won for Kendrick. Yeah, listen, big hip-hop feud going on. Drake is obviously Toronto in that feud, so I guess that makes the Bruins Team Kendrick, which is the team I'm on. So
okay, great.
Absolutely. Someone else said it was a low blow by me, referencing Milbury. I wasn't taking a shot at Milbury. I was just cracking a joke about, when you start talking about families
as
potentially being a distraction, like that's where people's minds go, because he, had a clumsy comment during the COVID bubble year, and it was a whole thing.
It's fair to criticize him anyway.
I wasn't taking a shot. By the way, Milbury had the segment of the week on the Greg Hill show, saying something was up with Pasternak that was, kind of only fed into the machine, the criticism that was building against Pasternak, that he
the outside noise
answered in Game 7 with the overtime winner, which is where we'll wrap up on the high note. Christian Narcan coming up next. We got Red Sox baseball this afternoon. We'll be back next Sunday, 9 a.m. with Razor back in studio. We'll talk to you then.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.